Hello everyone, Alex here from warnoffkeys.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can have nested objects within MongoDB schemas. So here I have this user schema. This is something that we've worked on throughout this series, and if you have your own schemas you can follow along with those. So we're going to be using this project we've been working on throughout this series. If you have access to your own project, feel free to use that. If you want to clone this from the GitHub repository, a link to this can be found in the video description. And real quick before we start, if you need help with anything, feel free to leave a comment down below or ask in the Warn Off Keys Discord server, and I'll try to see if I can help from there. So within our schemas folder, we have our user schema here, and this contains some very basic information, such as an email, username, password, messages, which is going to be a counter, such as how many messages they have, and then also the previous name history. Now this messages really shouldn't be called this, it should be called message count or something like that. And in reality, we don't really need to store how many messages there have. We can actually change this object into an array of strings, or better yet, into an array of objects that is going to be a different schema. So above this schema, I'm going to create another schema, and this is going to be called a message schema. So I can say constant message schema. This is going to be mongoose.schema with a capital S, and then an object inside of the parameters. Now within here, we have to define the different properties this schema or this document will have. So for example, we could have a user ID, and this is going to be a required string. We could have the text, which will be the actual message. This will be a required string as well. And then as a second options argument, we can use timestamps as true, which is something I covered in a previous video, is going to automatically give us access to created at and updated at timestamps that we don't have to handle at all. It does it all for us. Like I say, timestamps is true. And now this messages object here on line 20, this can be changed to an array of message schema. So now I can go ahead and save this, and going inside of our main file, we have some code here from our previous video. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So now we just have this basic function that is simply going to connect to Mongo. I'm going to drag the user schema over to the right side so we can look at it while we're coding. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new user. So I can say await new user schema. We're going to have an object. The email will be test@test.com. The username will be testing. The password will be pass. And then after the entire function call, I can do .save. So I can go ahead and save this file. We can run this with node index.js. There were no errors, so if I go into Mongo Atlas, I can then click on find, and we see this new object right here, which is test@test.com. And so here we see that this is the document that was created. So under messages, there's nothing there at the moment. Now let's say I go back into here and I wanted to create a messages object here. So we can say messages, and this is going to be an array. And inside, we're going to have a message schema similar to this. So just for testing, let's say I say test is true. If I save this and I run the code again, we actually get an error. If I expand this, it's going to say validation error, user's validation failed, message.text, path text is required. And then also it says user ID, path user ID is required. That's because we set these to required strings. Now, of course, the entire object is optional. So if we were to pass in no objects here or an empty array, that wouldn't matter. But because we do have an object, it's going to try and validate that object. And so we do have to follow the exact proper format that we defined in our schema because these are required strings as defined here. So with that said, we can go through and use the user ID and the text. Let's assume that the user ID will be their email. And so I can say user ID will be test@test.com. We actually can just move this into its own variable because we don't want to repeat ourselves. So I can say constant email equals test@test.com. And then here on line 12, I can just remove these and it'll use email as the key name as well as the value for the variable. And now user ID, we can use email as well. Now we're no longer repeating ourselves. We just have our one single email variable here. Now we still need the text. And so here I can say text. We can just say hello world, for example. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this a couple times. I can say hello world 2 and hello world 3. Now I can go ahead and save this and I can run the code. So there were no errors. Going back into Mongo, if I click on find, we now see this new document. Under messages, we have 3 different objects. The first one is hello world, test@test.com, hello world 2, and hello world 3. Now we see created at and updated at timestamps, and again, that is something that the schema did automatically on line 14. We don't have to handle that. So this is how you're going to insert nested documents. Now, how to actually retrieve these or search by these is going to be something we're going to cover right now. So I'm going to go ahead and comment all of this out. And then below it, I'm going to say await user schema.find. So this is going to have an object. And within here, let's say that we want to find all messages that are going to have the text hello world 2. We then have to have our key here wrapped inside of quotes, because we are then going to say messages dot text. This is going to be equal to hello world 2. This actually should be find 1, and then we can store the results inside of a result constant. So constant results equals this. Now afterwards, I can console log the results, just like this. And so this is going to search for the first document that matches this specified query right here. Because we're using find one, it'll only find one document and then return that immediately. And the exact query right here is message.text, which is going to access the message property and then the text property of whatever the nested document is. This is going to be hello world 2. So if I save this and I run the code with node index.js, we then get the entire object back. And the reason for that is it's not going to just return the message right here. It's going to return the entire base document that is going to contain that filter. Now, if we had multiple other messages that did not have hello world 2, then we would not get any of those back. And to demonstrate this, I can go into Mongo and I can edit this with a pencil, and we can go into hello world 2, and I'm going to change this to hello world 4. I can then scroll down and click on update. And so now hello world 2 does not exist. However, we still have all 3 documents inside of our messages array. It's just hello world 2 is not there. So if I were to go back and run this code again, we're then going to get null as a result because it could not find anything that matched messages.text hello world 2 because it doesn't exist. And so this is how you're going to find based off of nested documents. Now, of course, you don't have to always use find one here. This is just what I chose to use. You could use other types of search queries within Mongo, but this is how you are going to insert nested documents as well as find or search based off of those nested documents values. Thanks for watching this MongoDB tutorial. If you need help or have a video request, feel free to leave a comment down below or ask in the Warren Off Keys Discord, which will be linked in the video description. If you want to learn more about MongoDB, you can consider clicking on one of the videos you see on your screen now.